That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, you sound.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your patience and for switching over to the new live stream here. So, thanks for joining us. This is the first time, obviously, that we're doing this. So we ran into some technical difficulties, but Jim was able to sort through it. And we also had some back of the house. Oops, she's saying, can you switch to a phone? Jen says, can you switch to a phone?
I think we're good now. Hey, Bridget, can you hear us okay now? How's everything look? Type something in the chat. Let us know. Yeah, good. Naftali, are you on yet? Oh, thanks, Julia. Julia says sounds good. Listen, sounds good.
She's saying we have 28 people on. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
That's a bonus. All right. Cool. All right. Well, let's just get started. And hopefully, if people are following the other link, that they will find us. I don't know if that's going to work, but oh well. We got to work with what we got. So thank you for joining us. This is the first time doing this. We thought it'd be a good way to engage with all of you out there, interested in maybe hearing a little bit about our backstory. So we'll chat for a little bit, and you'll get to hear both sides of the story. Jim and I sometimes have different versions of what actually happened. And then you can ask us anything. As I said earlier in class today, I'm an open book, but Jim sometimes keeps secrets.
And we'll save a lot of time at the end for questions. So if you have a burning question, of course, we'll keep an eye on the chat once in a while as we're telling our little stories. But we're going to try to not look at this too much because we want it to be a little more personable and save a lot of time at the end for Q&A. Yeah, sound good?
So we thought we'd start kind of from the beginning, and some of you might know, sometimes we share this story with teacher trainees. So if you took our training, you might have heard how Jim and I first met. And this was at least, 25 years ago?
2002.
Okay. So that, I guess I started
practicing. James exaggerates sometimes.
No, well, I started practicing about 25 years ago, and I can't remember when I actually met you, but it was at Moksha, which is a yoga studio that some of you know. And it was their River East location, which is closed now. But a lot of yoga teachers got a start there because it was one of the few yoga studios that offered a lot of workshops and teacher training. And, back in early 2000s, there wasn't yet a yoga studio on every corner. So Jim and I met there. Jim was doing massage therapy when you were just practicing yoga, you weren't teaching yet.
Right.
And I had been practicing for a while and started to get more interested in training with teachers. When I first started teaching, I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. I studied with a teacher that was in Indiana, who's still my spiritual mentor today, Jerry Lee Lucas. And I kind of got thrown to the wolves because I never had any formal training, but people kept asking me to teach. And so I would end up in these positions where I would be teaching and I had no formal training. And again, back then there weren't a lot of teacher trainings out there. So I didn't even know that there was such a thing. So I finally started to find my way to Moksha. And from there, Jim and I just we were acquaintances. We didn't really hang out or anything like that outside of the studio. We just kind of passed each other every once in a while. And yeah, tell me a little bit. I don't even really know your history with Moksha up until we met. How did you end up there?
Well, I had been practicing yoga for a few years on and off, and I was living and up in Edgewater for a while. And then I moved to be closer downtown. So I moved into the River West neighborhood, and I stumbled upon Moksha because I wanted to get a Thai massage. I wanted to learn more about Thai massage because at the time I was a massage therapist. I wanted to learn more about Thai massage, and our friend Paul Weitz was the guy in town at the time who you went to for Thai massage. So he was at Moksha a lot. He was one of the main teachers at Moksha Yoga Center, and I followed him there, and then I discovered that Moksha was very close to where I was living. So I started going a couple times a week to Paul's class. Then I got into Ashtanga a little bit with the owner Darren and some of the other Ashtanga teachers there. And for a couple of years, I was really into the classes at Moksha, including a lot of Ashtanga classes. And that's when we had just met, as James mentioned. That's when Andre Lapa came strolling through town. And at the time, he was just, no one knew who he was in the U.S. And so what he did was I'm not sure how long he did this, but he just traveled around the U.S. Any yoga studios that would host him, he would do a free workshop. Mm. And he kind of blew our minds with what he was doing, because he was doing some things that we had both read about in books, but no one was teaching in Chicago. And then he did some things that we never saw before that were super interesting and very impressive and challenging. So that's when I didn't know Andre for too long before we made the commitment to go to Ukraine to study with him. I actually had planned to go to India to study Ashtanga Vinyasa that winter. But
I didn't know that.
Someone convinced me to change my plans, because Darren was going to go too. I was going to go with Darren. Someone convinced us to change our plans and go to Kyiv, Ukraine in the winter. Now, I had planned to go to India in the winter. That makes more sense, right? But we went to, he convinced us to go train with Andre Lapa, do a teacher training in Kyiv, Ukraine. We left Christmas Day, 2001.
That's so weird, because I was also supposed to go to India, not with Darren though. But I had scheduled, this is how I was able to go to Ukraine. So basically my life looked like I'd work my ass off for like 6 months, and then I would want to travel for like 3 months or however long I could stay away for. So that was like my life. That was how I lived my life. I would travel for months at a time and then come back and work. And so I had been drawn to go to India just to travel and study. So I had planned on taking off like 3 or 4 months. And so, I had money saved up and things like that to a degree. And then Andre came in, he did his workshop, and it changed everything. I knew immediately, as soon as I took his workshop, I was going to go study with him in Ukraine. And I remember after the first training with him, I went into the office, and he was sitting on a chair and on his little computer, and I just stood next to him like, can I come to Ukraine and study with you? And he looks up at me, he's like, I do not believe you. I was like, well, I do want to do this. And he did not believe that I would actually do it. So then he challenged me in a way, in his Ukrainian way, he told me that if I could get a small group of people to go to Ukraine for a teacher training, which is like a 3-week teacher training, that I could come and study with him. And so that is how I started rounding people up. And Jim was like, it was prime, because we just all like experienced a weekend with Andre, and Andre like blew so many of our minds. Like he was getting us into postures I never even knew existed. And
he played this very esoteric music really loudly that he picked specifically for that class that we never heard before. And it sounded like you were someplace else also.
Yeah, he really transported you, and he did a lot of subtle practices that Jim and I also had never experienced, like in a classroom setting. So it didn't take much for me to talk. I think there was 6 of us initially.
There were 6
to go to this training, and it was a little insane because it was going to be in the middle of winter. So it was going to be cold as shit, and it was going to be during the holidays. So somehow I got 6 people on board to do this training.
who were mostly the yoga teachers at Moksha, or a number of Moksha yoga teachers, and then myself and Ann, who were not teachers. But I was starting to think that I wanted to teach, but I knew I wanted to study with Andre.
And so yeah, everything got settled. We had to like get permission. Like Andre had to get permission at that time. We weren't, we knew we were going to go there, and we weren't allowed to go there or something.
That was Russia.
Oh, that was Russia.
That brings up a whole other story.
Yeah,
the visa situation.
But basically, we were supposed to get a visa for Ukraine as well, and that's how Jim got deported from Ukraine because he showed up. Somebody told you. I don't know why you believe this.
Here's what happened. Why I believe this?
Yeah.
Here's what happened. Well, it was my mistake. So at the time, I had never left the country. It was 2001 at the time. I'd never left the country. And of course, it suddenly got harder to travel throughout the world because it was 2001. And so I got a passport. I knew I needed a passport. So I had a passport. And we knew we were going to go to Russia because we were going to spend most of the time in Kyiv. But then Andre was teaching workshops in Moscow and St. Petersburg while we were going to be there. So he's like, you need to get visas for Russia also. So I'm hearing all this visa talk, and I didn't really know what it was. At some point in the planning situation, because we were emailing, like I didn't email much, we were emailing back and forth. James emailed and said, don't worry about, we can't get a visa for Russia while we're here. We'll need to get that when we're Ukraine. So I read, we don't need visas here.
For Ukraine.
No visas, period. I heard we don't need visas. So I thought I'll get visas when we're there. I didn't know that we needed visas for Ukraine while we're here in Chicago. So we fly Christmas Day. We had to lay over in Frankfurt, Germany. And on the way there, I'm like, hey guys, do we need a visa for Ukraine? And they're like, their eyes got huge. Like, yeah, you need a visa for Ukraine. So it was too late then. It's like, well, let's see what happens. We land after the layover in Frankfurt, we land in Kyiv. We're in like a dark basement of the airport where we're going through security and immigration and with people in military uniforms and guns. And I get to the desk and I give the woman my passport, and she looks at it and says, "Where's your visa?" And I don't have one.
And she's such a bad.
And she kind of laughed and like, "No, where's your visa?" And I don't have one. She picked up a phone, put it down. A minute later, a military guy grabbed my arm and pulled me back to the plane. So I spent a week in Frankfurt, Germany, because they put me back on the plane I came in on. I had to wait a week because in Europe everything closes between Christmas and New Year. So I waited a week in Frankfurt, Germany, because I'm like, I'm this far, I'm not going home. Finally, January 2nd, I went to the consulate in Bonn, Germany, came back to Frankfurt, and ended up missing just a week or so of the Ukraine trip. Yeah, we picked up from there.
So all of us have gone through security, and we're waiting. We have no fucking idea what's going on because Jim's back there. We know that there's a chance, right, that he's not going to get over, but we can't hear what's going on. So all we see on the other side of security, and they won't let us talk to them. They won't let us engage with them because of whatever, it's like against their laws or whatever. So all we see is Jim getting carried away by these military men, and we have no idea at that point like what's going to happen to him. We don't know if he's going to get like thrown in jail. Like we have no idea. So we were very nervous for you.
I was too.
And then, luckily, did we have cell phones back then? No, and there was no cell phones.
There were cell phones, but we didn't have.
We didn't have cell phones. I don't think
they were around, but I didn't.
Not then. Yeah.
We should pick up this conversation here because.
Oh yeah.
So anyway, and we studied with Andre in Kyiv for a solid month, and every day 3-hour practices, and there's a nighttime 3-hour intense practices. Then, yes.
I need my readers.
The camera off you. You can also look.
I read the story coming about.
Then, during the day, he would run us around Kyiv and show us the city because it's a great world-class city, obviously. Very intense practices, kind of hard traveling, and again, it was winter time. So as the month went on, our group got smaller and smaller. People started kind of dropping off and coming back home because it was hard traveling. It's hard traveling, very hard classes, very hard practices. But so at some point, it was only three of us left: Darren, the owner of Moksha, and us two. And we got along really well. We really enjoyed the practices.
Well, you and I got along really well. Darren and I were dating at the time. We ended up breaking up.
Right. That's what you and I got along really well. This is another story. We got along great. So we bonded through like these intense yoga practices and just spending time in a far off land together. We didn't know anyone.
That was like Narnia.
No, it was not.
But I think it was helpful that we were isolated, right? I mean, we lived in this apartment. It was like it was in the city, but it was very quiet, and it was very unfamiliar to both of us. Neither of us had been to that part of the world, and I had traveled enough, to kind of expect things, that were unfamiliar. But this was very, very unique, and it was one of the most amazing experiences I think I've ever had traveling. And so, yeah. And then Jim, you stayed a little bit longer than the training, right? And then I probably ended up staying about 3.5 or 4 months. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. You stayed longer. I stayed 2 months. And within that trip, we also, as I mentioned, we did go to Moscow and St. Petersburg. Had a great time. It's very cold in Moscow in the winter. We also took a little side trip to Egypt. We had a great time going to Sharm el Sheikh and the Red Sea, and we saw the pyramids. So that was cool too. So it was a really great, somewhat hard but great trip. It was a life-changing trip, really.
Yeah.
Then we come back. I started teaching yoga slowly but surely. I changed. My plan was to teach a little yoga and still do a lot of body work and massage therapy. But pretty quickly, I started teaching lab yoga. So within a year of me getting back, I was just teaching yoga and doing very little massage. And it's shortly after that, James decided he wanted to go study with Dharma Mitra because James found other teachers that he wanted to spend time with. So he moved to New York for a while. I started studying with Rod Stryker. I spent a good decade apprenticing and doing a lot of trainings with him throughout the U.S. and India. Then James finds another teacher he wants to study with, Dr. Vasant Lad in Ayurveda. So he moves to Albuquerque and spends 2 years in Albuquerque studying Ayurveda. That's when, in the whole meantime, I'm teaching. Starting to do a little traveling and teaching. And that's when I kind of decided. And then I was thinking about this yesterday. At the time, I was teaching at the two top studios in Chicago, Moksha and Yoga View, and I really enjoyed teaching there. They're great studios, and Nature as well. They're great studios, but at that point, I've been teaching full time for 7 years, I think, about 7 years, and I thought it might be time to. And again, I was happy teaching at those studios. They're still good studios. But I felt like and I had James in my mind, of course, too. I wanted to open a place that we kind of set the tone, because the way we both taught was a little bit of the oddballs at the studios we taught at. We were the guys who didn't play music or played very little music. First of all, we made people do breathing and meditation. We made people do other things that made us a little different. And my thought was, let's open a place that is not different. That's what people do. People do what we feel is a more well-rounded approach to yoga, and everyone kind of does it. So I called James, and at some point he came back, and I didn't have to twist his arm too hard.
No,
we started looking for spaces.
That's a core moment of mine, because I remember I was wrapping up school, and I remember standing in my apartment in the kitchen. Again, we didn't have cell phones. I think I was on a landline, because I remember holding the phone and there was a cord attached to it.
At that point, we had cell phones, but we still use landlines too.
Yeah, like I don't remember like me being on a cell phone then. But I remember Jim, the question you asked me, like, are you moving back to Chicago? And I was like, I guess so. And then his next sentence was, good, because we're opening up a yoga studio. And then I was like, okay. Like, it really wasn't I don't know, like it just felt like that was what was supposed to happen.
And then I moved down to the South Loop in 2008, and we basically spent a year. Like we spent a year looking for places. I would walk by. I walk through the neighborhood every day looking for rent signs on retail spaces. And at some point, we finally found one, and one of our friends, Doug, helped us find. He was a real estate guy. Helped us find a place. And for a little while, while we were still looking, we rented out a dance studio. Intrigue Dance is still around in the South Loop. We rented out Intrigue on Sundays because they were closed. And we had a list of people who used to go to a different studio in the South Loop that closed. Because that was our idea. We had a friend who owned a studio called Core in the South Loop, but they closed. And the only other studio in the South Loop for yoga was Core Power Yoga, and we were so different from them. So we figured we'd be a great alternative to people who didn't want to do hot, sweaty yoga all the time. So we rented out this dance studio on Sundays. We had a little list of people. Some of you on this chat, I bet, are from that group. If Tamara's on here, or Monica, Liz Gleason, we had a nice little group before we even had a space.
I call them the original peaches. They're the original peaches. And at that time, the South Loop isn't weird space. Like it was a weird like evolution in terms of the neighborhood. People thought we were either crazy for opening up a business in that neighborhood or really smart.
Well, and it was 2009 too, so it was the big, kind of a crash. The recession, it was for sure recession.
Yeah, and a huge crash with real estate. So yeah, the neighborhood was booming up until then, and then everything just everybody that had big buildings were going into foreclosure, and it was just the neighborhood just stopped growing.
And speaking of foreclosure, that's why we didn't stay in our original space too long. We were there for 2 years, maybe.
Yeah,
and our landlord was getting foreclosed on. So all of a sudden, we didn't know who our landlord was anymore, and we didn't know who to send checks to. But people are calling us asking for checks. So, and we wanted to expand anyway because it was a small space. So we figured that was the time to move on. So that's when we opened our second location above BMO on 13th and Wabash. And we stayed there for 8 years.
Yep.
There for a long time. A great space, but anyone who owns a small business and has a retail space knows that, you have to look at the leases. And one problem with our lease was we had to pay the taxes. And right about then is when real estate taxes really jumped up in Chicago.
And we had no control. It was like an open net lease where it was like you just paid whatever the increase was. So every year we never knew what the fuck our rent was going to be.
And it got crazy. So we made it through the end of the lease, but we knew that we couldn't stay there with that uncertainty, and the landlord would not lower the rent and wouldn't change the terms. So we had to move on.
Yeah.
So we thought we found a great spot on Michigan Avenue. We were really excited about that. A little smaller, a little cheaper, on the ground floor. And of course, most of you at this point know that we did the build out. Of course, it cost a lot of money to do the build out. And we opened up the week before lockdown happened. We opened up the Michigan Avenue location in March 2020.
Yeah.
So we spent a couple of years doing online only through Zoom. And that same thing, that landlord wouldn't go down on the prices either. And that lease was just going to be too much because we had a lot less people coming to the studio.
Yeah.
We had half people we originally had come in the studio when we moved in. So
yeah, that sucked. They just did like no rental assistance for us, or they just wouldn't budge. I don't know what they were looking. They just seemed to be like they were just waiting for us to just default on our lease or something because they just didn't give a shit.
But they did let us out of our lease early. So
they did.
That brings us to our present space. We got a great lease on this space.
Yeah.
It was already as a yoga studio for 15 years. Some of you might know my old friend Vinny opened the studio up like 15 years ago. He called it a call yoga. He left it to one of his teachers who called it bottom line yoga. During the pandemic, the owner of Bottom Line Yoga took on a 9-to-5 job. So this space was open and available, ready to go. So it's kind of a no-brainer because we needed a home. We had no place to go, and this place was ready for us, and with a great lease. So here we are.
That is the story of the nomadic yoga studio, why we have moved so often. It is not by choice. Because I have not said this is our last place now. Every time we moved, I said this is it. We're staying here. Now I haven't said that because I just feel like I jinx us like every single time. So who the fuck knows where we'll be in 3 years? But
so then we also want to talk about where we see Taters headed in the future. Some of you already may have noticed some slight changes in the schedule over the last year or so, and we're going to continue to do a little bit at a time. In January, you're probably going to notice at least one new type of class that hasn't been offered before. And we're going to do a little switching around the schedule because, frankly, when we moved in this building, we thought we would get certain crowds before and after work, and it hasn't really happened that much. So we're going to change around some of the times, just a few of them. We're going to create a little more time during the weekend for just community getting together, and so you don't need to rush out of the studio right away after a class. We'll have some snacks here for you, and we'll have a little time to just talk with your friends after class. You won't get brushed out quickly like we kind of have to now.
This is something I'm really excited about because I remember in the 1300 space when we were above the bank. It was just such a great space to hang in. Like there's different little pockets and little sitting areas. You sit in the front lobby and chat and not disturb class so much. And here, we don't really have those barriers, so you can hear people in the lobby. And we really wanted to make a change so that we brought that sense of community space back. And we've got like this little coffee and tea area now, and we've got plenty of seating. So on Saturdays, we've created more of a gap between classes.
That will start in January.
Not yet. And that will hopefully create opportunities for people just to hang out either after class or even come before class and have tea and like have classes like intermingle with each other and stuff. So we're gonna see how that goes, and I'm hoping that it's popular and people take advantage of that. And we will entice you with some snacks.
And now at some point relatively soon, we're going to send out a survey. So if you're not on our email list already, or for some reason you don't get our emails anymore, go in there and sign up for our email, because we're going to send out a survey to ask you what you'd like to see more of and what times as far as classes goes. What times you would like to see on our schedule that we don't already have, and what types of classes. We want to hear from you to help serve all the students better. We've got some ideas, but of course we want to hear what you have to say too.
Yep. Oh shit. Before we finalize things, we definitely want to hear from you. Vanessa mentioned Liz's cookies.
Oh,
Putting Liz on the spot.
But yeah, maybe Liz, our friend Liz Gleason, will bring some cookies over on Saturday mornings now.
At least for the inaugural.
Yes, that'd be nice.
I'm going to refer to it as the Breakfast Club.
So I think that's it. I do want to save some time for questions and answers. So if you have any questions, type it in the chat section. It seems like people are finding the chat section pretty nicely here. So type your question in the chat section. One of us will watch that. Another one will answer the question, I guess.
Yeah. So you look for the questions. One of the other things. So yeah. Good. If you have questions, I love it.
Oh wow. We haven't talked about hairdos at all. Okay, quickly. My hair is always kind of in the same.
This is the latest.
That's the latest.
It's mullet.
My hair has always kind of been the same. When we first opened Taters, I had a little more stubble, but shortly after, it's been pretty clean shaven for a while. When I was younger, I had a powerful mullet, but that was like in the 90s.
Jim likes to play with his facial hair. Like it's not great. Yeah. Your soul patch is the worst.
Yeah, no people don't like that. But here are some things you might not have known about James's hairstyles. One, shortly after Ukraine, James had hair down to his shoulders.
Yeah, it was all one length. All one length.
Down to his shoulders, long. Shortly after that, he had cornrows.
Well, that was a very brief. It's not like
he had cornrows.
I did.
I'm not judging you.
I did have cornrows, but I mean, that was just like a brief moment. Like it didn't like sport him like for months at a time or something.
He does shave his head once in a while, and he's had. Oh wait, but when he had long hair, it was really curly. I think he got a perm. He had curly long hair. He had every once in a while he'll shave his head, and he's had a number of mohawk faux hawks at this point now as well. Never a mullet though.
Never a mullet. I've
That as
had,
far as I
yeah,
know.
the faux hawk. The faux hawk came after the long hair because I was in Costa Rica as soon as I got back from Ukraine, and it started dreading. My hair started dreading up because it was so sandy and like messy. So then I had somebody cut it down there into a faux hawk, and then yeah, it's been shaven. This is like a new creation. Then
So those are James. Oh, and then also he likes to follow whatever Brad Pitt does too. He follows Brad Pitt's hair.
I think Brad follows me. I'm
Yeah,
telling you,
you're probably right.
I'm telling you, when I was in Costa Rica, that faux hawk did not exist. And then what's his name? The soccer player, hot soccer player, who's married.
Beckham?
Yeah, Beckham. And Beckham got it, and everybody had him. So
Yeah.
I think I have my finger
Trendsetter
on the
of Here at the
pulse
Stars. That's true.
of hair.
Yeah.
Watch, you're gonna see people with like kind of a fake mullet like I got. Just watch. Let's see it. Yeah.
Okay, that's all our hair stories. Any other questions? Vanaja, I'll read it. Vanaja says, when I first met him in Dharma. Oh, Vanaja said she met you in Dharmamitra's class and you had a bandana. You like to wear, we wore bandanas for a while.
Yeah, when my hair was long, because it would get because I sweat so much.
Julie Mello wants to know, what new class are we offering? I'm not sure we should let the cat out of the bag.
Well, I mean, why would you keep it secret? You
All
want people to show up, don't you?
Well, I want people to tune into the newsletters and stuff. Starting in January, I will have a class that focuses on balance. It's going to be more on the gentler side, so it's not going to be like hand balance and stuff. It's going to be on just helping keep your balance by doing things for basic things for core strength, hip mobility, ankle and foot mobility. The important things so you don't fall. And it is on the gentler sides, but it's really applicable to everyone. Even if you're an Olympic level athlete, you still need to work on your balance, because the more you do, the less chance you will fall when you're doing anything, whether it's vigorous or just walking down the street. So it's going to be a better balance class. We're going to start with that, see how it goes. I also at some point might want to start a weekly healthy low back class, but let's see how this first specialty class goes, because sometimes they start out hot and then they fizzle kind of quickly.
Yeah.
So we'll see how the better balance class goes. But yeah, that's my latest contribution to adding a new class.
Yeah, I should mention for old age as well.
There might be Dipping Bird in that one. We'll see, Julie, who shows up.
But yeah, I think it's a great idea, because Jim and I already add so much like strength and stability and core exercises into our regular classes. I think, and people love it. Like we get a lot of comments on that's one of the reasons why they like our classes. But I think a class devoted to that. And I think there's going to be opportunities for you to challenge yourself, like different levels of challenge.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So it'll be a pretty good range of, I think, levels of practitioners in that class. So it'll be fun. Upcoming workshops on weaving Tantra into classes, since you both have that practice.
What's that?
Lee is asking, good video. Any upcoming workshops on weaving Tantra into classes, since you both have that practice?
A number of our workshops kind of already do that. Like, I'm thinking already about the Bandha Mudra workshop. I mean, that's pretty tantric hatha yoga. The Bandha Mudra workshop, the pranayama workshop. If you have more specific ideas, I mean, I guess we could add more theory. We could add more theory into how we do that, but we do it in our classes. We probably don't talk about it in the class though. Yeah, it's kind of tricky, when we're using these more subtle practices, whether it's like visualization, mantra, mudra, bandha. When we're incorporating those, I mean, that is stemming from a lot of the tantric practices, and there's philosophical reasons, that kind of support why those practices work or what they're doing. But yeah, we don't talk a lot about it, I think, because we feel like people are there for the practice and the experience of it. And so we try to lead more workshops. And Lee, you know what? I I used to do those workshops a lot more. We do have those workshops in our software database, I guess. I just been doing less of them. I don't know why, but I'm thinking it's because they weren't well attended, you know. So that will maybe inspire us to add some of those back into the workshop rotation. Because like I said, I did actually had a teacher training, a 5-day teacher training based on that, on incorporating tantra practices into vinyasa classes. But we don't do those 5-day trainings anymore. And again, I'm assuming we'd stopped doing those workshops because they weren't well attended. So we'll revisit it. That's a good idea.
Yeah, maybe we just need a little break.
Maybe once a year.
There's a level of attraction to them now that we do.
And that's actually another, I'm glad you asked that question, Lee, because, one thing that we're going to start doing a little bit more of is having some pop-up classes and workshops. Now, they won't be total pop-up classes because we'll give you a little heads up, but, we, especially this one, he likes to have our schedule planned a year in advance. So you might have seen recently on social media, we've been talking about the 2024 workshops are planned for the most part and on our schedule. But there are some weeks, some Saturdays that are free still, as well as Sunday afternoons. And there's actually some times during the week, during the day, that we can actually throw a class in there that's not usually scheduled. So, but for those, we'll give you a couple of days notice. It won't be like a true pop-up where it just comes out of nowhere. We'll give you a couple of days notice. So maybe that will work its way into one of those time slots that's not scheduled way in advance, because we do have some, like I said, open some time slots.
Yeah. And then Kelly mentioned the app. We do have lots of content on the app, so thanks for mentioning that, Kelly. And then we put in the thread that we put a link in there if you want to sign up for the on-demand classes. So
right now we have over 300 classes on our app.
Yeah.
Of all different time lengths. If you haven't looked at it lately, 15 minutes up to an hour and 15 minutes. But most of them though are about half hour. We have more half-hour classes than everything else, and we did that because those were the most popular. Those were being watched the most. We made more of them. But just a couple of weeks ago, I made a new 60-minute class because someone actually on social media asked us to do that. So we'll add more of those as people ask for them. We'll do it.
Yeah, if you're on the app, if you have the app and there's something that's missing that you want, I mean, Jim and I, we love that. We love inspiration of being like, hey, can you do a 60-minute class on this or a vigorous class or whatever? We'll just do it, and then it'll be on the site. And then Julia asks, any chance Mr. Bennett will be doing 2-hour classes like I do on occasion?
Yeah, well, let's look at some, and I was actually thinking about doing one relatively soon because we do have some Saturdays coming up that we have nothing planned, like this Saturday. So keep an eye out. I bet before the end of the year, I'm willing to wager $1 that before the end of the year, I will do a 2-hour extended practice. It'll probably be on a Saturday afternoon. I don't want to do it on Sunday. Probably Saturday afternoon.
That's Jimmy's day off. It's his day of rest. But yeah, I love doing those. They're so fun. If you haven't come to a 2-hour class yet and you're interested, and they maybe make you a little nervous about how long they are, or maybe how vigorous they are. Some of you might chime in here. But what did you say?
When I look at you, look at the camera, and vice versa.
But they really are accessible for a wide range of practitioners. I used to do, sometimes people have in the back of their head that I used to do 3-hour vigorous classes. We used to do a 3-hour vigorous class. Those classes
so long.
They were long and they were hard. We got into some multiple complicated poses and intricate breathing techniques. And these are not like that. They tend to be have some more complicated poses in there, but I take my time with them. I'm not just shouting out poses. I do demonstration of more complicated poses. We break them down. So if you feel like a little intimidated by a 2-hour practice, I will say that we practice physical asana for probably maybe 60 full minutes, 75 minutes. Probably 75 minutes. Yeah. And then the rest is like a longer Shavasana and then more subtle techniques. We do sound therapy, we do mantra work, we do visualization. So
Mina wants to know if you'll offer more workshops like through the lens of Ayurveda, because she really enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, the Lens of Ayurveda is going to be a series that's new. So we did the first workshop. I just kind of did a test with the definition of health. That was the first one and the only one I had fully developed at the time. But now there's 4. So in addition to the definition of health workshop within that series, there's the first one that I'm going to go into more of the philosophical roots of Ayurveda. And that's going to be really interesting because a lot of people don't know about Sankhya philosophy. They don't know about the other 5 philosophies that are based in India that Ayurveda pulls from. So you really start to understand like where Ayurveda gets kind of like it's how it's informed. And then we're going to talk about, we have another one, I'll do the definition of health one. And then we're going to talk one just focused on the mind. And so we dive into like what Ayurveda believes the mind is composed of, and then how all the tools that we can use to work with the mind. And then towards the end of the year, this one gets a little bit more involved. So you need a little bit of background in Ayurveda, but we talk about Samprapti, which is pathogenesis, or the pathway of disease. And that's really informative because it trains us to start assessing ourselves in a very specific way through signs and symptoms, so we can catch these primordial signs and symptoms, which are the easiest to manage. And then you'll have basic like general remedies to address those. So it's pretty interesting stuff.
Any other comments, questions? Any of my friends from Jiu-Jitsu on here? They want some questions or some answers? Does anyone who is watching right now have, Leah already gave us a suggestion, a request for a workshop. How about for a weekly class? It seems like quite a few people have already mentioned that the Better Balance class is, they're excited about the Better Balance class, but how about other types of classes? No?
And just to give you guys a heads up too, I mean, just besides Jim and I doing like certain pop-up classes or, you know, kind of offering something new or different, we also have several teachers that are starting to do more workshops here. Jenny is one of them. It's been doing a lot of workshops. She's got her Yoga Nidra tomorrow. She has a foot and ankle, strength and mobility classes and workshops. And then we also have Rich Logan in town. He's going to be doing a 2-hour class. You mentioned a 2-hour class, Julia. If you've never practiced with Rich Logan, he is a very knowledgeable and quirky individual that we really love. And he's in town for a couple of months. So we have him on the November 19th doing a 2-hour vinyasa class. So yeah, always be on the lookout for either like some pop-up classes or teachers, you know, besides Jim and myself, that are offering workshops in addition to like maybe regularly scheduled classes.
All right, which is pretty good. Sorry again for the late start. We there's a lot of boxes to check in the YouTube lives, and I think I missed one when we scheduled it, so I had to start new. Sorry about that. I'm glad you all were able to join though. It looks like everyone did get over that was originally on the first one.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks so much. We really love engaging this way. I mean, if you feel like you want something more of this, like if you want more opportunities for question and answer, or, you know, you just, I don't know why you necessarily just want to listen to Jim and I bicker, but
you know, also, I forgot what I was going to say now. I lost my train of thought.
But yeah.
Oh, social media and emails. So if you don't get our newsletters and you used to, or you want to, you might need to go and make sure, if you don't get our newsletters and you want to, let us know. Email us and let us know, because something happened recently where a few people, myself being one of them, weren't getting our emails anymore. We had to go back into the settings and reset some things. So if you're not getting our newsletters, let us know. Also, check out our social media if you don't already. I know a lot of you don't like social media too much, but we update things and we post things on there all the time. So if as an example, like asking what kind of classes you might want to see, we make posts on that kind of stuff all the time. So check out our Facebook pages, Instagram as well, and we also have a TikTok account. If anyone's watching TikTok, check us out there. And always in those comments, make comments and feel free to share our offerings with your friends on social media as well. That would help us out a lot.
Cool. You're welcome, Ina. You're welcome, Doreen. Thanks for joining us, everyone. You're welcome, Bridget. See you in class. Hi, Kelly. Ivy. Sounds good, Keith. Yep, I think you'll dig it. Let us know if you have any comments about it. It's good to have you out there.
Keith.
Yeah.
Hey, Keith. Miss you, buddy.
You can't see who's joined. It just shows you the number. Are we ready to end the stream?
Yep. See you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. We love you.